Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this session, we're going to uh, look at the Altman Z calculation for predicting bankruptcy, and we're going to use this data that you see on the screen in the Excel data sheet. So let's familiarize ourselves with the data. Here we have a list of companies, and the first column A shows the code for that company, column B shows the name, column C shows the year, and column D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and L, they are different financial measures: current assets, total assets, earnings before interest and tax, current liability, total liability, net income, retained earnings, sales, and market value. So we discussed these uh, in detail in class. What we want to do is we want to perform the Altman Z calculation, and we want to predict whether the uh, company is likely to go bankrupt or not. And we know that there are five uh, measures that Altman Z looks at and then puts them into a formula. So you can refer back to the slides of chapter 8 to relearn the Altman Z, uh, the idea behind the Altman Z and the formula, and we're going to apply it now. So there are five measures, and they're called X1. So we're going to label them X1, X2, X3, X4, and X5. Okay. Now, X1, if you remember, is working capital divided by total assets. So we are going to calculate this. The working capital, the formula for calculating working capital is current assets minus current liabilities. So we are going to put on top current assets, which is D2, minus current liability, which is G2, and we're going to divide this with total assets. Okay, total assets. So total assets is E2. Okay, so this is the first measure, right? Looking at the working capital divided by the total assets. The second measure is retained earnings divided by total assets. So we do retained earnings, which is J2 divided by total assets, which is E2. Okay, so again, we have this in the second column. In the third column, for X3, we have earnings before interest and tax divided by total assets. So earnings before interest and tax is F2 divided by total assets, which is E2. Okay. Then we have for X4, market value of the stock divided by the book value of the loan, which is L2 divided by the total liability, which is H2. Okay, so we have that, and we want to format this cell to show us two decimals only for ease of calculation. And then X5, we have sales divided by total assets. So sales is K2 divided by total assets is E2. Okay, again, we want to look at, we want to format this cell. Okay, so this is, now we have the 5 measures. Now in the next column we are going to calculate Altman's Z. Okay, now the formula for Altman's Z is x1 times 1.2 plus x2 times 1.4 plus x3 times 3.3 plus x4 times 0.6 plus x5 times 1.0. So we're going to now put this formula in here. First, x1, which is in m2 times 1.2 plus x2, which is n2 times 1.4 plus x3, which is O2 times 3.3 plus x4, which is P2 times 0.6 plus x5, which is Q2 times 1.0. Okay, now we have calculated the Altman Z for this one company, and let's format this to 2. Okay, now we want to copy this formula all the way down for all the observations. So we copy and we are going to paste it here. So we bring our mouse to the box M3, we click and hold the shift button, and instead of using the arrow, if you use the page down, if you come down here and you do page down, then you can do it faster. So do page down. We have 2,300 observations, so we want to do it quickly, and we have 2,333 observations, and we click enter. So now we have copied it for all of the, we've copied it for all of the companies. Now what we want to do is we want to we want to create a table where we want to look at the companies who have an Altman Z of less than 1.8. Those companies are at risk, high risk for bankruptcy. We want to look at companies that are between 1.8 and 3, who are at somewhat risk, not a very high risk. And then we want to look at companies that have 3 or above in Altman Z score, which means these companies do not have any risk of bankruptcy. So we want to create that table. We'll come to this T1 box and we type in bins. In the T2 we type in 1.79, and in T3 we type in 2.99. Okay. Now what we want to do is we go to data. We go to data on the top panel. We come down to the right and we go to data analysis, and we select histogram and we click OK. Here in the input range, we want to type in $R $1 colon $R $2330, and in the bin range we want to type in $T $1 colon $T $3, and we want to click this box that says labels, and we want to leave this alone. We want to make sure that this new work ply is checked, and we click OK. As soon as we do that, it creates a table in a different sheet. So what we get from here is that 304 companies are at risk, high risk for bankruptcy. 509 companies who have a score between 1.8 and 3. There are 509 companies that are at a moderate risk. They're not a high risk. And then we have 1,516 companies that are not at risk for bankruptcy. So this is what we get from this analysis about the data file we have. So this brings us to the end of our analysis.